Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. Before I start, I'd like to draw to my declaration of members' interest, and in particular, since the organisations have been mentioned so far, to state that I'm a member of the British Medical Association and a member of the Royal College of Paediatrics and Child Health. So this measure under Article 90, under Amendment 92 was brought in the context of a pandemic. So the reason the rules were brought in the first place was to protect women from coronavirus and to reduce the spread of coronavirus within society at a time when we did not have a vaccine. This debate today, I want to make clear, is not about ideology for me at all. It's not about the rights or wrongs of abortion, whether women should or should not be able to have them, whether or not life begins at birth, or anything of that nature. Society and Parliament has decreed that abortions do take place, that women should have the right to choose, and I actually support that. But this is a debate for me about women's safety, and in particular the safety of our most vulnerable and marginalised women and girls. So previously women would have attended a clinic and been given a tablet, and then they would have had another tablet to take a day or so later, and it is usual that the bleeding will begin in the hours after the second tablet taken a few days later. Under the new process, a woman or girl can speak to somebody on the telephone to arrange those tablets to be delivered to her, or go and collected by her and then taken at home. What makes it very difficult for a clinician is it makes it very difficult to tell if the woman that they're speaking to on the telephone is indeed pregnant. There are no necessarily visible signs of pregnancy below 10 weeks. You would not be able to expect to palpate it in the abdomen, so it's not clear to the a clinician on the phone if the woman is pregnant. Now clearly one would believe the woman when she says she's pregnant, but there's no way to be certain. In particular, there's no way to be certain of gestation, and whilst a woman may know when she's had sex and when her last period was, quite a number of women will bleed in the early stages of pregnancy, and some women mistake those early bleeds for a period, which means that women may believe they are less pregnant than they are. And whereas if they attend a clinic, this can be determined. If this is done over the telephone, this cannot be determined. And the NNHDP, which was mentioned by my right friend before, has found a number of examples of women who have, since March 2020, delivered babies quite significantly later in gestation, so mid to late term abortions, believing that they were early in pregnancy when they were not. This included 12 babies who were born with signs of life, so they would have been quite advanced into the pregnancy, who thought they were less than 10 weeks, or told the doctors they were less than 10 weeks, but they were not. And in 6 of these cases, the woman giving birth was herself a child. And one can only imagine the distress felt by those women and children when they take an abortion pill to deliver what they believe to be a fetus of less than 10 weeks, and out comes a baby of up to 30 weeks gestation who may have at that point been alive. It isn't rare to have side effects from these tablets. So 1 in 17 women, this has been mentioned earlier, have to attend hospital, and 36 call 999 each month because of complications of taking these medicines at home. So that's my first point. There's no way of knowing the gestation. The second point is children. I think if this measure had been brought in a proper fashion, rather than as an amendment to something else, or rather than as part of the coronavirus regulations, we would have discussed it quite thoroughly. And I think on the face of the bill, we would have made it very clear that this should not apply to children. I do not think many people in this House think a 14-year-old girl should be ringing up and receiving abortion medicines over the telephone. But indeed, this is what this legislation allows to happen. And you may say, well, maybe doctors wouldn't do that, but we've seen that 6 of those children who delivered babies that they thought were much earlier than they were in fact themselves under the age of 18. I will give way, yeah.
Further to that point, isn't that the point? That this was a measure brought in hastily in a pandemic. And therefore, if members are not sure today, far from abstaining, what we should do is return to the status quo pre-pandemic, and then this House, this government, should take this issue seriously on its own, consider it properly, and then ask us to make a decision.
Thank you. I can only absolutely agree with my right honourable friend's intervention. I also want to talk about coercion, because we know that some women may be coerced into having an abortion. I'll give way.
the Honourable Lady. Just before she moves on, I just wanted to raise with her, and obviously she has a clinical background, and she will know jolly well about the range of safeguarding measures that all the clinicians, the Royal Colleges, those involved in abortion care have to follow. And she makes it sound as if there are no safeguards in place. So, for instance, if a 14-year-old did telephone a clinician to seek advice around abortion, that clinician may well say, I want to see you face to face. There is nothing to stop that happening, and that may well be a proper safeguard that would carry on irrespective of whether this telemedicine carries on today.
Well, I think the Right Honourable Lady, with respect, makes my point for me, because actually that's right. There is nothing to stop that happening, and it may be that the doctor would say that they would not do, but they don't have to. And we know that abortions are being prescribed by telemedicine to children under the age of 18. And I believe that if this had been looked at properly by the House as a single issue rather than this amendment onto something else, we would have stipulated that children under the age of 18 should not be receiving abortions over the telephone without proper appointments, which I think that they should have, and which the Right Honourable Lady also seems to say that, if I understand her correctly, that they should be having. I also want to talk about coercion. So we know that sometimes women can be, and girls can be, coerced into having abortions that they do not want, perhaps because the baby is of a gender or a sex that the father does not want to have, perhaps because they are being abused, they're trafficked, they're being sexually assaulted. And it's very difficult for a woman to, over the telephone, tell somebody about that. Whereas if a woman is seen in clinic, she has that one-to-one opportunity with... I'm going to finish my point now. She has a one-to-one opportunity with that clinician, that chance to say, please, can you help me? And the clinicians are alert to that opportunity to provide that with the help. It's true that if the woman receives the abortion by post, the problem of her being pregnant is solved, but the problem of her being abused is not. And that's what can continue to go on. And I'm going to continue. The other problem with giving tablets is you spoke for 12 minutes, and that was more. Which is 16 minutes, which is considerably more than a fair share given the number of people available. So I will keep going. So, women who will take the tablets, if you prescribe something over the telephone that's of this severity, you don't know who's going to take those tablets. Are these tablets going to be taken by the woman that's speaking to you on the telephone? Are they going to be given to somebody else? Are they going to be sold to somebody else? Is somebody else going to be forced to take them? The reality is we do not know, and we cannot know. And that, again, is another safety. So I think I'd like to summarise my concern by saying, as a woman who... I've not had an abortion, but I guess in the future that I could become pregnant and not want to be. If I was to be having an abortion, I would rather have the inconvenience of having to go to a clinic than the worry of knowing that some women are having abortions without going to this clinic. Essentially, for me, this is an issue of, do we want to make things more convenient for the majority of women, or do we want to protect those women who are the most vulnerable, the most marginalised, and the most at risk?
Yeah. I intend